This is the Movie Theater Butter Podcast, where we talk about stories made into movies and what was modified for the big screen. As a warning, this episode will discuss the plot of both the movie and its original source material, so be ready for spoilers. I'm your host, Kim Labick, and I hope you enjoy the show. Honor, courage, commitment. These are 3 nouns. And I've got 3 more nouns for you today. They are Top Gun Maverick. And yes, you're thinking, okay, technically in this context, top is used as an adjective, but I don't really care. Anyways, today we are here to discuss one of the movies that, quote, saved the film industry. And I am joined today by a person that is probably the best suited, especially out of my friend group, to speak on this film. My good friend, Cody. Cody, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what makes you the best guest for this episode?
My name is Cody Bashaar. I'm a production assistant director. I've been working in Hollywood for over a decade on various television shows. I'm a military nerd, and I spent the last 5 years working on the television show SEAL Team on CBS Paramount. And yeah, I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. I'm not a veteran, but I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, this is a movie, right? Like, I think this movie as a military film is the most accurate. And I'm not actually in the military, despite my little camouflage of the day. But it is probably the most accurate to military experience and technology. But that being said, at the end of the day, it is a movie. So we brought you here because you are the best person to speak on this. And also, you and I literally met on SEAL Team. Like, that's how I know you. That's how we became friends. So this is like the perfect film for us to talk about today. And I've been meaning to talk about this for a while. I mean, I loved it when it came out. And it's just like, it's been like brewing on the side to bring to the podcast. So here we are. Hell yeah. All right. So go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No. Sorry. It was such a. The movie took like 5 years to make, and like 3 of those were them just sitting on it because COVID happened and they couldn't release it in theaters. And then,
yeah, and that is, we'll get into it in a minute, sort of why we say this is one of the films that, quote, saved the film industry. Because there's kind of a lot when we talk about that. But first, before we really dive into it, we always go through and say our favorite quote. Cody, would you like to start off? Do you have a favorite quote from the movie?
It was probably when, towards the beginning of the movie, when he crashes the experimental jet fighter. He lands in a cafe in the middle of Rust Belt or Middle America, middle of nowhere, and walks into this diner, gets poured a glass of water, and asks a kid, "Where are we?" And the kid looks at him and goes, "Earth."
Yeah. And it was that was very like 90s film in the sense that, of course, we have this like little kid who's like, "Oh my God, this is a spaceman."
Yeah, and I mean, of course, there's the classic "Don't think, just do," but that's the quote of the movie. So yeah, expand a little bit.
True. For my favorite quote, I chose, "It's not the plane, it's the pilot," because I feel like that's also a very encompassing, and it's so classic. It's such a classic, like, just cheesy enough kind of line that you're like, oh, we get it, because it describes Maverick. It, in some ways, kind of describes Tom Cruise. We don't have to dive too much into that. But yeah, it's not the plane, it's the pilot. I felt was like a very all-encompassing quote for this film and the franchise and sort of the messaging that it's trying to put out. Which actually leads us right into our big disclaimer for this episode and about this film. So this film is quite clearly the biggest piece of U.S. military propaganda to date. The Department of Defense is very, very loud and very open about the fact that they had a huge heavy hand in the creation of this film. If you don't know this, if kind of this is your first time learning about the military's direct involvement in the film, they're actually very active in film production in general. They kind of have a whole I don't know if you would say studio really, but they have a section where they work very closely with the entertainment industry. And that's why for instance, in this film, they were able to film partially in like San Diego on the actual base and all of that because they were so closely involved with the DoD. That being said, though, yes, we could talk about the military propaganda of it all, whatever. I would love to talk about just like how fun and cool this film is because you can kind of like go all day of just like getting a little too heavily political argumentative about it, and I don't want to really like dive into that. Of course, like it'll be brought up, but just kind of starting off with that disclaimer, it's kind of obvious. We all know it. I mean, it's Top Gun Maverick. Like you go into this film, you know what you're going into.
Yeah, it's
But
guys in
it
fighter
was
jets.
so fun.
It's people in fighter jets, but fighter
Yeah,
jets
it's
are
good
kind
guy
of
versus
cool.
bad guy. Yeah, really fucking cool. That was okay. So that's one of the coolest things about this film. Many things, but one of the coolest things about this film is that the actors literally fucking learned to fly the FA-18s, which are the jets that they fly. And it's like I dove a little bit into the process. I wonder if you have any kind of insight on how some of that worked, but all I know is that they sort of like leveled up what plane they were learning to pilot. Obviously, like they started with I think I looked it up. I think they started with a Cessna and then kind of leveled up from there. I don't really have a lot of plane knowledge. I am a skydiver, so I do jump out of planes, but I don't know enough about the actual like tech within the planes to say too much about that. I don't know. Did you have anything fun to share on like just how that was like really cool?
Well, all the main actors got some level of flight training, but they still used actual fighter jet pilots in the filming.
Yes.
So just like when you see actors in like a military project go to boot camp, they went somewhere for a week and learned basic gun handling skills and stuff like that, and how to move in a tactical manner. Which, if you don't know anything about the military, you're gonna learn. And they get yelled at by a drill instructor for a week, and sometimes they use it as a bonding experience for the actors. But yeah, I mean, much like in any big project, that's probably the training they had to go through to even get the part is some sort of flight training. But yeah, I mean, Tom Cruise owns the P-51 Mustang that he flies at the end of the movie. That was his plane that they actually showed in the movie. So he
Nice.
is one of the rare ones that, like, I know they still used a double for him, but I wouldn't have necessarily been surprised if he would have been able to fly the F-18, and not
Yeah.
necessarily
Well,
do
and
some of
he's
the.
so like that's one of his defining traits as a person, as an actor, is he so often is like, I do my own stunts. And if I
He goes
don't know
all
how to
in.
do it, I'm going to find out how to do it. He goes all in, which is like, say what you want. I do think there's an incredible level of dedication that requires. And I respect the hell out of that. I mean, especially when it comes to you yourself, right? You can't really tell anybody else to do a crazy stunt as much as you yourself can be like, yeah, I'll do it. Like I'll figure it out and I'll do it. So an incredible amount of just autonomy and dedication on that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Tom Cruise is a guy that's known for that. I mean, I think it was one of the Mission Impossible movies. He broke his foot in a stunt and didn't stop, didn't say cut, got up and finished the take before they then cut and paused for 6 weeks while he
yeah,
recovered from breaking his foot. But yeah, the dude is no doubt probably. I mean, Scientology aside,
right. Let's,
yeah.
for this episode today,
The
we
big
will
elephant in
set
the
that
room.
aside. The
The
big
big
elephant in the
elephant in the
room,
room.
for
um,
sure.
but yeah, there's one thing that you can't say about Tom Cruise is that he's not dedicated. So it's like it's
Very
not a
true.
surprise that he goes all in everything that he does.
Yeah. And then, it's the actors as well. I'm pretty sure they knew what they were getting into when you signed on for this film. I mean, you already know that you're going to be involved in a level of stunts because it's a Top Gun movie, because it's Tom Cruise. But then, like, I would have loved to kind of hear the conversations and like where those conversations happened as to like when the actors found out that they would be learning to fly the FA-18s and Also, like, kind of acting as a little bit of a camera operator because they had to fully start and stop the camera. They weren't like setting it up or anything, but
Yeah,
nonetheless, that requires a little bit of technical knowledge in case you needed to troubleshoot something also. But
yeah.
I would love to know, like, was it in the casting call? I mean, there wasn't really a casting call because it's Top Gun Maverick. But like, was it like the agents would talk to the actors, do you think? And kind of like let them know, like, hey, by the way, you're
Yes.
gonna be flying a plane.
Yeah, it would have probably come from their agent or manager, and it would have been, hey, one, if you aren't in really good shape right now, you should start working on getting into really good shape because this movie is gonna like. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another like topic to be addressed at another time. Is the
The
inherently
shirtlessness of it all.
yeah. Well, I mean the yeah the
Yeah.
wild
The football scene.
yeah. um, I mean that was this movie's volleyball scene. I mean the movie itself is very much like almost a one-to-one parallel of the first movie. You can very much just jump right into this movie having not seen the original Top Gun and still
Hmm.
enjoy it. Um, which I think helped it as a movie because they were just able to kind of write the same movie and just make it cooler.
Yeah. Well, and okay, that's the biggest thing for me because so movie theater butter were largely about adaptation. So this film is an adaptation because it's a follow-up to another film. And specifically this being like one of the longest periods of time in between the original and its sequel. And I mean, we've actually seen that a couple times recently, like Furiosa would be considered a little bit of a time, but nonetheless, Maverick, I think it was like how many years exactly? I should have looked this up. It was at least
Um,
20 something years
I think
between
Top
when
Gun
the
was like
original came out.
1986. I believe Top Gun was 1987.
Yeah.
Uh,
God, which is just crazy. But nonetheless,
1986.
1986. Okay, so like me trying to do math in my head.
1986 to
At least 20
2022.
years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I almost wanted to ask my Alexa. That's how like lame I am when it comes
Yeah.
to doing simple math these days. Nonetheless, really crazy. But like this film in particular, okay, so original Top Gun was so cheesy, and that was part of what was fun about it, and that was part of what we all loved about it. And it was also the 80s, so like the interpretation of its cheesiness was a little bit different, if that makes sense. Like it's
Yeah.
not
Everything was kind of over the top.
yeah, everything was kind of over the top. I mean, you have like the Berlin Take My Breath Away stuff of it all that's just like so cheesy and so fun. And I think that super benefited this film coming out however long later because you can rely on a level of cheesiness. Like you can make it a little bit predictable, a little bit the same movie in like different styling kind of thing,
Yeah.
which it was, like you just mentioned, it was kind of I almost want to compare it to a second for like A New Hope
A
versus
Force Awakens. Yeah.
yeah, in that way that like we all kind of watched The Force Awakens and we're like, yeah, it was basically A New Hope, a little bit different, which in that context worked differently. But in this context, again, because you have such a cheesy, iconic film, you can be a little cheesy and iconic in that same way of like, yeah, we can also, it's almost like they're making fun of themselves a little bit,
Yeah.
but in a way that only they can and get away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very fun. And
Um,
they saved the film industry. So,
well, yeah, and that was an interesting decision, but I mean, because I think they didn't finish production until like 2021 or something like that, and they sat on the movie for what, a year and a half before they finally like
yeah.
COVID was over, and yeah, um,
A lot of quotes in this episode. I like it.
a yeah, um, but definitely when it had died down as a pandemic. Because I do think that it's a movie that, if we're talking peak viewing experience, needs to be seen on the biggest screen possible. It was
Hmm.
a sensory overload. Um, yeah, I took my younger sister, who's not a typical action movie fan, and she was very surprised because she loved it and she was on the edge of her seat the entire movie. It's like, okay,
Mm. Hell yeah. Yeah, that was another thing of this film is such a they call it a quadrant film, right? It's like a wide appeal film, is kind of just the way to say it. It appeals to sort of the four main quadrants of like an audience demographic.
yeah,
And that's part of why it's largely said to be one of the films that brought back the film industry because again, at the time when it came out, we were still just post-COVID enough that like people weren't really going places as much, especially not to the theater. I mean, streaming had become
the de facto winner.
yeah, the de facto winner of the past couple of years. And God, I'm gonna get so sidetracked because the industry is chaos right now, and you and I know
And
that, and it affects our daily lives. But
and it's
in that
partly
time,
caused by the streaming wars.
it's partly, yeah, it's largely caused by the streaming wars. But, you know, this was one of the films that really, really drew audiences back because it is so wide appealing. Even if you're not a big action film fan, you're still maybe like just, you know, a cheesy movie fan, or it's just a movie that like you could pitch this to anybody and they'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll check it out, kind of thing. Like, even if you hate action films,
Yeah,
you'd probably be like, well, yeah, there's some part of it that I'm gonna like. Maybe it's the Jennifer Connelly parts that are a different type of action with like the sailing scene and that kind of thing. Or maybe you want those like corny little bits where they're at the bar and all of the servicemen are like gently poking fun at each other, being like, haha, you suck at pool. Haha,
I'm
you suck
cooler
at
than
pool.
you are. My name is cooler than
I'm
you are.
cooler. I have a mustache.
I'm a hangman.
Yeah. The nicknames. The nicknames was a part where like they could have flopped. Like, let's be honest, they could have flopped so easily and had like pretty lame nicknames. But I feel like again, they held up so nicely with like the fun, silly cheesiness of the original Top Gun. We have like again, Hangman, we have Fanboy, we have oh God, what are some of
Bob.
the other names? I'm like forgetting. Bob, yeah. But who like apparently Tom Cruise like always has a Bob character in his films. I don't know why, but maybe it's like by
Phoenix.
accident.
There was Phoenix.
Phoenix.
It was Phoenix
Yeah.
and Bob. Um, he of course is Maverick. There was Hangman. Yeah, there was. Yeah, but yeah. I mean, yeah. Call signs are such a big part of like fighter pilot culture. So you kind of
Mhm.
gotta have a cool one if you're doing a fighter pilot movie. You're gonna definitely fall on your face if you don't have
Yeah.
a cool call sign. I mean, Maverick and Goose.
Yeah.
Talk to me,
Or even
Goose.
like a last name. Like it's kind of in the same cultural area as when, you know, guys in high school in the 90s would call each other by their last name. You know, like if your name was John Smith, like they wouldn't be like,
Hey,
"Hey John,
Smith.
hey Johnny." It would be like, "Hey Smith." Yeah, exactly. I honestly like this is so unrelated. I kind of wish that my last name was cool enough for people to call me it as a nickname in that way. It's not. It doesn't really fit. But that's okay. I have other nickname potentials for my name.
I mean, people
So,
always get my last name wrong, so I
yeah.
I've kind of stopped correcting them. It's like
Can I
people
start
read
calling
it.
you Beish? Is that weird?
No, no, that
Okay.
you're
We'll
you're
test
at least you're at least saying the first four letters correctly.
Beish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go back for a quick second to my favorite scene, one of the most iconic scenes in all of film history, the football scene that we chatted about for a second, which is, of course, an excellent homage to the original. But I have a bit of a hot take here, because as much as I'm going to talk about how I really do love this film overall, my one big critique with this film, on a story aspect, the football scene should have been gayer, like at least 25% gayer, for many reasons. I mean, first of all, it's 2022 at this point, and like, come on, we could have been gayer. It was right there. It needed to be 25% more homoerotic, and I would have been like, perfect.
A
Like,
little
just,
bit more butt slap.
I don't know, a little bit more butt slapping. You know, maybe we get like a close up on a nipple. I don't know, with something to just like tweak it up a little bit. But that's like kind of my one critique, because I think that would have sealed the deal for me, especially on the cheesiness of it. It would have been such a classic, like, we know what was fun and funny about the volleyball scene that you guys
Yeah.
all loved so much, because it was homoerotic. Because it's, guys, it's the Navy. It's the Navy. Do I have to say it? It needed to be 25% Garrett. That's my biggest critique with this film. Yeah. That being said, very fun scene. Great gifts came out of that, you know?
Yep, yep.
How many times have you watched that scene, Cody? Be honest. Not enough?
Probably 4 or 5 times.
Okay. That sounds
Four
about
or
right.
five times I've watched the movie.
Yeah. I might have watched it a few more than that. But that's personal preference. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I guess like other stuff that is such a very direct callback to the original, and again, in such a way that perfectly benefits this film and is again the whole reason why it like kind of brought back the film industry a little bit. They start off with Danger Zone. They
Yeah,
immediately brought Danger Zone back
yep.
in. And it was like the original too. It wasn't like a remix or like a newer version. It was like they were like, we know what you love. You love Danger Zone. Here you go. Welcome
All right,
back. And I was like,
here
oh.
we are on an aircraft carrier in the ocean. We're launching F-18s off the aircraft carrier. Oh, you
Mm-hmm.
thought it was going to be a Tomcat that was on that catapult? Nope, we're in the modern day now. We're flying F-18s.
Hell yeah. Okay, so this is a question that I have for you, I guess, then on that exact topic of like some of the planes that, like, I don't know. I guess I probably know the answer to this, but how accurate were they with some of that? How accurate are we to what sort of planes would actually be on a carrier?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would be F-18s. I think there's 5 modern fighter jets that are still in the U.S. military, like circle. You have the F-35, the F-22, the F-18. I think we will fly the Strike Eagle, the F-16 Strike Eagle, and then we have
Yeah,
the A-10 Thunderbolt. Um, but yeah, F-18s are easier to store than the wings fold up, so you can have a bunch of them in reserve. I think there's like usually depends on what aircraft carrier, but at least 20 to 30 on an aircraft carrier. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as accuracy, yeah, one of the actors on SEAL Team, Tyler Gray, has said before that there are elements of, I mean, talking about SEAL Team, he is a real former special operator. He said that it's like it's still Hollywood, but the show is authentic, and there's a level of authenticity that Top Gun Maverick had that was impressive to uh, extreme degree. But it's still Hollywood. There are still some things where it's like, okay, this is a movie. Of course that's gonna happen because this is a movie. I mean, of
yeah,
course Hangman shows up at the end when they're out of ammo and out of missiles to save them at the very end. It's like, of course that's gonna happen. It's
that's
like, I mean,
yeah,
it's a movie. You don't. That would be a very bleak way to end a very fun movie with just the two main characters getting like dying in a fiery explosion. Um,
yeah. Speaking of the accuracy of the film, I mean that's of course part of a huge part of the DoD's involvement in the film, and we don't have
yes.
to go too heavy into that again because I know we're dabbling it in gently. Um, but going back to Tom Cruise of it all, Tom Cruise is notoriously a short man, which who cares, guys? Doesn't matter. But I recently learned, and this might be okay. Hang on, my friends might have been actually like completely fucking with me when they told me this, but I could have sworn I fact checked. Pilots, especially if you're undergoing a certain level of G-force, it can literally make you shorter.
Yes.
Especially if it's like, isn't that also part of the ejection? Like if you eject, you're also just like adding a heavy G-force or
Yeah.
something, and like that can actually shrink you, kind of.
Yep.
Okay,
It's the same way. I
crazy.
mean, it's the same reason astronauts, when they come back from a long stint in space, are usually significantly shorter and have lost significant muscle density because when you're pulling g forces, the
Yeah,
gravity is just compressing your body, or in their case, not compressing it, and that's why they lose muscle density in space. But
yeah.
yeah,
So
um,
honestly, that's just more accuracy of this film because Tom Cruise would be short if he was a pilot, even if he started off taller.
yep. I mean,
I kind of want to look up how tall he is right now. I'm gonna say 5'8", and I hope
I
I'm
think
right.
he's 5'9". maybe 5'8", maybe 5'7".
Oh, 5'7". Okay, nice. That's okay. That's right around how tall Napoleon was. So
Yeah, everybody thinks
there's
Napoleon is
that.
way shorter than he actually was, and it's like the man was a little shorter than the modern average, but probably at the average height of the day.
Yeah, he was just emotionally short. That's kind of, I
Yes,
think, why
yes.
there's like the ongoing joke about it. But Tom Cruise and Top Gun Maverick, and such a fun film. Another thing I want to discuss is yes, there was a heavy involvement of like the actors actually doing, this piloting and these stunts and et cetera, et cetera. However, a little bit of a common misconception, there was still a ton of VFX in the action sequences. Not to like lessen the amount of practical effects because it's still incredibly impactful and just cool to do all of that for this film. But it should be said, it needs to be noted that there was a level of VFX in this film. And I looked it up. Can you guess how many VFX shots there were in this film?
Um, VFX
I can give you
shots.
like
I'm
a
guessing in the like tens of
level.
thousands, tens of thousands.
Kinda. So the average Marvel film runs at around 3,000.
Okay,
So do you want to kind of like adjust
okay. I'm gonna go 12,000.
exactly twice that many? It
Okay,
was about
24,000.
2,000, 4,000. Yeah.
Oh,
Two,
oh,
two,
oh,
two,
2,400.
2,400. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
2,400 VFX shots in Top Gun Maverick, which is just a bit under the average Marvel film, which I don't know about you. I did find that a little bit shocking because I feel like the
I
marketing
mean,
also like overly emphasized how practical everything was.
well, I mean, that's the dream, right? Like, I mean, visual effects are getting so good. I mean, that's what I mean. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard good things about the new Twisters movie. And
I just saw it last night.
thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs
Thumbs
up.
up. It
Yeah.
was, I'll say a quick little non-spoilery anything. Because I'm also doing an episode of that, and I think it'll probably release around the same time as this one. But I loved the original Twister movie, and what I wanted out of this new Twisters movie, I
Was
got.
exactly
So,
what you got. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
and it's like something that I think Glenn Powell said in like BTS for that is that like, and to paraphrase and cheat off of what he says, um, visual effects are so good nowadays, but you can't totally rely on them. So the dream is a perfect melding of the two, where you have a level of practical effects that are enhanced by visual effects. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that it had a significant amount of visual effects shots, just because I mean, it looked so good, and uh,
Hmm.
everything has visual effects shots now, even even the
Yeah.
smallest thing. But
Which,
um,
I say that with like a little bit of a sadness, but it's not really sad. Movies have almost always been about this element of like movie magic. I mean, we can go way, way, way back to the original like Lumiere's brothers, and they started introducing film effects. Film effects, in some degree, have always been a part of cinema. So there's a level, right? I think every filmmaker has their kind of own take on what level of VFX they prefer, but nonetheless, VFX are like essential to most modern films and they're cool. You can do a lot of things with VFX you could never do in real life, and some of that is even balancing. Like for this kind of film, there's so much inherent danger in what they're doing because it's so heavy on the stunts of it all that like I'm sure that there were times they did some VFX to literally kind of protect actors from having to do the most dangerous things.
yeah, absolutely.
And of course, they're
Um,
also not gonna throw explosives on actual human beings. So
Correct.
there's also a level of that. Even though you and I have seen, okay, wait, this is such a sidetrack. You and I have seen real explosions on set before, and
Yeah.
it's always a fun time. It's always a very smartly crafted and safely created environment too. Um, Again, a little bit of so the season that I met you on was around the time that the Rush shooting happened, which was kind of interesting because I had not had experience prior to that set with working on a set with firearms. And yet here I was on SEAL team, there were firearm shots like at least every week kind of thing
We had
because
the
of the nature of
best.
what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we on SEAL team we had the best armor in Hollywood, Mike Papik. And
Absolutely.
the tragedy of the Rush shooting was you had 10 people that didn't do their jobs, and that
Hmm.
messed up in ways. I mean, I could go on a tangent about this for 15 minutes, but
Yeah. But
you had
the summary is,
you had 10 to 15
we
people
all
that
kind of
didn't do their
know.
jobs, and
Yeah.
our team on SEAL team was so good. I worked on that show for 5 seasons, and I never felt unsafe about around our armors, around our actors with the firearms. Everything
Hmm.
was done to the exact um, way it should have been, and you can use firearms in cinema and in TV and be safe about it because it just doesn't look the same. If you're familiar with firearms at all, it just doesn't look the same when you're using replicas um, or airsoft, which is the other thing people do. It just doesn't look the
Yeah.
same. And if we're talking about authenticity, it's hard to find the real authenticity when if you know what you're talking about, if you have any hands-on experience, you know it doesn't actually look or feel like that, and it takes that away. So, um,
Hmm.
yeah.
The
So,
safety is always a huge priority on
yes,
set. And that,
absolutely,
again, like, SEAL Team,
absolutely.
incredible about that. I was very, very lucky to have been a part of a season, even though when I worked, I was a COVID compliance officer, which was kind of silly and whatever. But nonetheless, got to meet some really fucking cool people, yourself included, and had an amazing time just working on that show. But yeah, I mean, the safety of it all, like, they were incredibly safe, incredibly. It was like it felt like almost overkill how safe they were, which was great because you should be in that kind of a situation.
Yep.
And similarly, anytime we had explosions or any other pyrotechnics, also incredibly safe. They would let you know several times throughout the day, hey, this is happening. Hey, it's coming up. This is what's the situation. Here's like the safe area, stay out, whatever. Um, Very, very careful and smart about that. And I'm sure that they were as well on the set of Maverick as they had to
Yes.
be. And I'm sure that, again, part of the balance of when to use VSFX or not was calculated based on what they could feasibly get done with these practical effects and these actual stunts versus also just there's a level of, again, things that are going to truly, truly threaten somebody's lives or just is not possible to get visually, get it in the VFX, or even just like tidy some things up. Like I'm sure there were some things where it's like, oh, they didn't go as fast as we wanted them to go in this jet. Maybe let's like try and speed it up a little bit, or even just like redo it in a way that's a little bit speedier.
Clean up the background a little bit, just make it a little bit cleaner and emptier, or be
Yeah.
able to tweak the colors, the colors of
Mm-hmm.
the background. Where yeah, it's like
100%.
VFX. You can make practical effects and VFX don't need to be enemies. They should be able to mesh together, and everything's better when they do.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan and
Completely agreed.
proponent of practical effects, but I'm not against visual effects at all. I mean, one of my favorite movies ever is Pacific Rim, and that's a giant
Yeah.
CGI romp. That
Hmm.
still holds up. It still looks good. Came out in 2010. Still holds up 14 years later.
Yeah. Even like we did an episode recently on the second Jurassic Park film, but we talked about how the first was like one of the main proponents of that cooperation between practical effects and visual effects that worked so nicely because Steven Spielberg is, oh, I don't know, kind of good at what he does, so he knows
Yep.
how to balance, hey, this is where VFX is going to help us and still look okay, versus, hey, I want practical effects here. It's going to look better and it holds up very, very well. I mean, we watch this now in 2024, and it's like I wouldn't really change anything. I feel
It
like I
still
look
looks
back on
good.
that film and be
Yep.
like, perfect.
Yep.
Yeah. So Maverick is another, and that I think also feeds into the reason why this film was mentioned as being like kind of partially saving the film industry. I think it was literally Spielberg himself who first kind of said that about Top Gun Maverick, was like, yeah, this was one of the films that really brought back the industry at a time where it was like dying and almost dead.
Well, and I think they're more talking about the like theaters because
Yes. Yeah.
like the post COVID immediate like middle of COVID, the streaming wars. Talking about like a post apocalyptic event, the streaming wars. Um,
Literally.
like the rush for content was crazy, and it created a weird. I mean, hey, I mean, I love going to the movie theater. It depends on the movie.
Mhm.
I'm the worst, and admittedly will always look if I can see a synopsis of a movie and read the synopsis of what happens in the movie and determine whether I would enjoy the story before I go see it. I
Okay.
spoil myself for every movie that I see because I know what I like and I know what
Hmm.
directors and actors I like. So if I think I'm gonna like the movie, I'm probably gonna like the movie. Um, but I also like totally understand the wanting to stay at home and not leave your house or apartment is huge in the introverted world. But
Yep.
Maverick was just such a wild experience. I mean, they shot most of the movie on IMAX cameras. Huge, huge frame. You see everything.
And the Sony Venice, like the first
Yeah,
Sony Venice
yeah,
in like 6K,
yeah.
which like, dude, there's nothing the Venice can't do. The Venice has like come out on top in recent years, even just in sporting events. Sorry, not on like a camera sidetrack, but Sony Venice is a fucking killer camera, and you crushed it, Sony. Thank you. I love you. Can't wait to use that in one of my future projects.
It's possibly.
But yeah, IMAX cameras. Sorry, go ahead.
Um, um, but yeah, it's like it was such it was an experience that was built for the theater. It wasn't. I mean, while I'm not saying you can't. I think it's a Paramount Plus. It's not a movie that you can't enjoy on your couch, but
Mhm.
it's definitely one of those experiences that you're better off seeing it on as big of a screen as possible. I didn't see it in IMAX, and after walking out of the movie theater, I was like, I should have gone to the like. I saw it kind of late in its run
Yeah.
in theaters when it was out of IMAX by then. There were other movies that had cycled in, um, and I regretted not seeing it in IMAX because the movie was awesome on the big screen. It just
Yeah.
being in the seat with the sound system, it did elevate the experience. There's certain movies, I think, big spectacle movies you should always see on a big screen. Most like Oppenheimer was interesting. That's what I think you could
Yeah.
have watched at home.
You know what?
Um,
I am going to interrupt you again. I'm so sorry, but I need to talk about this with you. I think we've talked about this in real life, but I need this recorded and put on the public domain or the public
Spear.
visual place. Yeah, the internet. Uh, the explosions of it all. Okay. Again, you worked on SEAL Team for like ever and ever and ever. I worked on SEAL Team for a season with you, and that's how I met you and became friends with you. Um, we had explosions in there that were significantly better than the Oppenheimer explosion. And I'm so sorry to say that, but like I remember the explosion for Oppenheimer being so, what's the word I'm thinking of? Overhyped. They were like, yeah, it's like he, tried so hard to make it look like a nuclear explosion without doing a nuclear explosion. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so ready for this. And then when I saw it in theaters, I was like, damn, I was spoiled with SEAL Team because I've seen explosions way better than that. Like,
Yeah,
it was fine. It was an explosion, but like
for a movie
overhyped.
all about a big boom. Well, it was a big boom. It wasn't that big of a
Yeah.
boom.
I've seen bigger booms and explosions too.
Yep.
Anyways. And that brings us back to the football scene. No, I'm kidding. Um
How many times have you watched it again? Um,
Too many. Do not look at my search history. Do not look at my YouTube history. Okay, so there is kind of a little, it's not really a fun fact, but it is just a neutral fact that I want to bring into this really quick because part of the story of Top Gun Maverick specifically is like, you're too old to be in the service. Why don't you go retire, man? And he's like, I'm never retiring. I'm Top Gun Maverick. He says that exact quote in the film, and it's in the trailer. But a neutral fact is that, according to the U.S. Naval Institute, the average age of a U.S. service member is roughly 28 years, which is accurate, is kind of exactly what I would have expected. But we're talking like he was too, like, not to be that person, but his character was too old to still be in the Navy. He was supposed to be 50 something, right? And
Yeah,
like,
the kind of point of the movie was that like he should have been. I mean, if he's going to be a career naval officer, he should have risen up the ranks by then. But I mean, that goes
mm,
into the whole story. Accurately, if he had risen up the ranks, he wouldn't have been able to actually fly anymore because it gets to the point where you
mhm.
don't, you just don't do that anymore. Somebody else does it for you. You're commanding from the back. You aren't the one rushing forward into the battle. You're the one ushering your troops into battle. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, maybe he
yeah.
was a little old, but I mean, Tom Cruise is going to Tom Cruise. Um,
Right, which is why, in so many ways, Tom Cruise is Maverick, kind of in the way that Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. Like, obviously, it is a fictional character. You are seeing a tailored, crafted version of this character. But there are similarities you can't ignore that I think do feed into the fact that these are instances of perfect casting. But on the age of it all, part of me does wonder if we see another Top Gun movie, which I don't think we will, we might see like a spin-off, I think they might try and do something like that. But as far as like the main Top Guns, I think this is it. But I wonder if Tom Cruise, like actual person, human being Tom Cruise, is sort of passing the torch in the way that his character of Maverick was finally passing the torch to uh the kids, you know?
yeah.
Like I
Um,
wonder, are we gonna see these characters again?
I mean, I'd be down. Give me people flying fast fighter jets all day. Fighter jets are cool, man. Um,
Yeah.
um, I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen. They kind of tied that little franchise with a nice little bow at the end.
Hmm.
But hey, never say never. Hollywood is motivated by profits, and Top Gun Maverick was a really successful movie. Um,
It was a really, really successful movie.
but also a really expensive movie. So that's nothing to remember because you got to remember Hollywood
But
accounting. Whatever the production budget, double it because that's probably what they spent on advertising.
absolutely. And Cody, you unintentionally brought us over to our movie theater butter pop quiz. Are you ready? Because they are the numbers. This is what I'm going to ask you. Do you know how much the budget was for Top Gun Maverick?
Um, I'm guessing probably around $250 million.
Not a bad guess. Actually, a little bit less than that. The
Yeah.
overall budget was about $170 million.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Follow up question. How much do you think the film grossed worldwide?
I think it was in the 1 point. I mean, it broke $1 billion. I think it was
Just
like
like
one.
it broke the sound barrier.
Yep. I'm gonna guess. My instinct says 1.3 billion dollars.
That is actually really close. 1.49.
Okay.
So
Okay.
just right around. You're just
Yeah.
100 million short. Like,
Yeah.
I'm also 100 million short for my next project. But yeah. No, but that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. There are a select amount of films that break 1 billion. And of course, Top Gun Maverick would have been that, which again feeds into why we claim this film as one of the big ones that really brought theaters back and, sort of the film industry in that same way. Uh, Crushed it. $1.4 billion. And then bonus question. Bonus question on the numbers. Cody. Cody Bashaar. How much was the 2022 military spending budget?
Oh.
If you're within 10 billion, I'll give it to you. I'll give you the invisible point.
I'm gonna say in the $450 billion mark. I don't think it was over a trillion because then you're getting into wild. Like I think the U.S. GDP is just like over a trillion, so that would be
Mhm.
wild. But let's go $600 billion.
Okay, okay. Getting closer, getting closer. Do you want to know the final answer?
Yes, please.
The military spending budget for 2022 was $779 billion, dollars,
That
which,
tracks.
yeah, that tracks. I mean, I think the common US citizen knows that our military spending budget is out of whack, and I think it is the number one, if not like one of the top military spending budgets in the world. Probably
If
it's the number
you
one.
if you add up the um the like next five or six, they still don't hit how much we spend.
God, yeah.
We spend more than everybody in a huge way.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Ooh, yeah. And that's why I think tickets to this movie should have been free. Because ultimately, our taxes
Our
are
taxes
going to
paid
this
for it.
military spending budget, which, if the DoD kind of sort of made this film, or, very much helped make this film, shouldn't we have just been able to see this movie for free? Theoretically? I don't know. But I use that excuse of been on a couple bases, and it's always like a fun, stupid dad joke of mine where I'm like, yeah, if I'm gonna like go get gas on base or something, like it should be free. I paid for it. This is mine already. I paid for all of this. But yeah. All right. So we've reached the end of our discussion, and there's so much more we could get into. I guess I do want to see, like, do you have any other big wrapping up sort of thoughts? Do you have a hot take you want to mention? A fun fact you want to drop in here? Something that we didn't really touch on yet?
Um, the little I think they call it a scorpion turn that the
Oh, yeah,
Iranian
yeah, yeah.
the Iranian, because if you look at the
Did they actually
geopolitics.
say?
No,
Did they
no, they
technically?
are no, they never actually say who the bad guy is. But if
Hmm.
you like, if you look at where, like, there's a couple shots where they kind of show the rough uh, description of where they are. Um, the easiest guess
Okay.
is that it's a strike against Iran. Um, but
Yeah, that would
yeah,
be
which
in the
tracks
lore.
that tracks is the big three of our
Yeah. Our
China,
what do
Russia,
they call it? Do they
uh,
say enemies? No, there's like another
adversaries,
word.
adversaries. Yeah,
Adversaries.
China, Russia,
Yeah.
Iran, North Korea is in there too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the little scorpion turn that thing does, it was kind of awesome, and
Yeah.
was like I could watch that
Yeah.
moment over and over and over again because the
As
fact
many
that
times as I've
planes
watched the football scene.
probably
Nice.
probably,
Good.
um, but the fact that airplanes can actually do that is kind of wild. It's just like kind of mind-bogglingly cool.
Yeah. It is so much of this film, and it kind of partially re-inspired me to get my pilot's license someday.
Nice.
So when I finally have the money and time for that, I'll complete the little circle of I jump out of planes, and then I'll be able to fly a plane. But hopefully not jump out of a plane that I'm flying unless my co-pilot is ready to take over, because that would be actually really cool but crazy, but not right now, not today.
Your
Um,
airplane.
yeah.
Whee!
Like I'm just gonna jump out of this. We'll just have the autopilot land it. Whatever.
Kim, why are you putting on your parachute? Wait, Kim, what are you doing? What are you doing,
I'll just
Kim?
do a little like
Yeet.
bye. All right. Our final question. Cody, how do you think Top Gun Maverick is best watched?
Um, I mean, ideally in a theater with a great sound system, but not everybody has a big home theater. I mean, I would say on the biggest screen you possibly can. It is not. It is not a movie you watch on your phone in bed. It is a movie you watch on your big screen TV in the living room. or you go over to your buddy's house who has a like 100-inch projector with a big sound system. It's like
Yes.
it's one of
Ugh.
those that you try to get the biggest frame. You want that entire frame filling your vision.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hell yeah.
yeah,
Completely agreed. Because it's just like it's a huge story in the way, like the scale of the story is huge in that way, and it is just like the cinematography of it does such a good job of what my like elementary school art teacher kept on talking about. She was like had heavy emphasis on like fill the frame, and I think whether or not it was directly exactly filling the frame with the subject versus like filling the frame with just depth and beauty and incredible coolness. Like, I don't know how to put this into words, but cinematography, good job. Crushed it.
yep,
It is a
yep,
physically big feeling film in several ways.
yep. I mean, yeah, it like the sound design and sound mixing is unbelievably good. I think it took those at the. I think other than Best Picture, Maverick won most of the technical awards it was nominated for at the Oscars the year that it was
I
there.
think so.
I could be
Hmm.
incorrect, but I'm pretty sure it swept the technical awards. Um, and deservedly so. It was wild how good that movie was and well done. But yeah, everything came together in. I mean, I think it's better than the original. Like, and I love the original.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is
So
crazy to say because yes. But there are like actually God, this goes back to like the theme of the podcast talking about adaptations and sequels live in that world. It is crazy when the reboot or sequel of a film is better than a film like the original because it doesn't happen often. I mean, most of us are like, yeah, the first one was the best of most things, but
yeah,
I totally agree. I do think Top Gun Maverick, I like it better than the original, which is crazy. Top Gun, the first film, is my dad's favorite movie, and Top Gun Maverick has become not my number one, but definitely in my top 10 favorite movies of all time.
yeah. Um, my top 10 fluctuates too much for.
Yeah.
It's like there are five that are firm in there, but the other five kind of change upon mood. Um,
Hmm. And just what comes out.
yeah,
Because there are great movies every year that come out that
yep,
can just like completely disrupt what your favorites are.
yep, absolutely.
Hell yeah. All right, Cody. I know I said that that was our last question, our real last question. Do you have any upcoming work or upcoming projects that you want to just talk about or plug or anything that's like
Um,
anything cool?
uh, not really. I just finished up the last season of 911 Lone Star. That was an
Nice.
adventure, and I'm glad to be getting some time off. Ryan Murphy shows are typically tough. Um, and
911 is Ryan Murphy?
911 and 911 Lone Star are both Ryan Murphy productions.
How did I not know that?
That man
I mean,
is
it's
everywhere in
very,
Hollywood.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yep,
I mean, good for him.
yep. Um,
Damn.
but yeah, I'm day playing here and there. Uh, but yeah, I'm excited to have some time off. I'm going to Comic Con this weekend. That should be fun. Um,
Hell yeah. Yeah, that'll be
yeah,
really good. I mean, it'll be like sweaty and crazy, but
yep,
fun and
yep.
amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I hope you have a good time and thank you so much. Is there anywhere like do you have a public social media that you want to plug? Like I'm
Um,
on Instagram or whatever.
my Instagram is crbwins, right as it's spelled, crbwins. It's a public Instagram. I just kind of post whatever I'm up to, and nerdy and stupid reels and shit like that, just like everybody else does. But yeah,
Good.
crbwins is my social. I don't have a Twitter. I think I have a Twitter account somewhere that I've lost, or but yeah, I'm not on Twitter slash X. CRB wins on Insta is my only social. Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you for calling it Twitter. I also don't have Twitter, but I definitely prefer when people refer to it as its dead name. If that sounds weird.
yeah,
The
yeah.
context.
It does a little bit, but it's
Yeah,
not.
it's like the
But it's
opposite.
yeah,
Yeah. Nice. Hell yeah. Thank you so much, Cody. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Happy to have you on the pod. Happy to have you on an episode that was like perfect for us to talk about.
Yep. Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Amazing. I'm going to go rewatch the movie again because it was so freaking fun.
That's a good
I have
idea.
nothing to do
That's
today.
a good idea.
All right. Well, bye. Well, it sounds like that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Movie Theater Butter, a Tilkin Productions podcast. Make sure to follow us where you're listening and on our Instagram page at the Movie Theater Butter podcast. And hey, it couldn't hurt if you gave us a quick 5-star rating on this platform. All right, I'm done. See you next episode.